Well, hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk. So I'm very lucky to be joined by Mike France from Christopher Ward. We did an interview last year, very interesting, went into the history of Christopher Ward, but at that time we were in the middle of a pandemic, so I'll definitely ask you about that, Mike. But thank you so much for joining us on the channel.
My pleasure, Sam. It's good to be back. I'm glad you think you're lucky as well.
Yes, I mean, last year we were in the middle of the pandemic. We're sort of hopefully coming to the tail end of it now. At the time, you'd really restructured the way that you were operating, but it quite successful for you. Did that continue on?
Not so much restructuring, more just carrying on was our MO. I mean, we were fortunate, as I said to you, that we were allowed to continue trading as an online-only business. We didn't suffer the problems of having to close stores as so many of our competitors unfortunately had to do. And as a result, we took the decision after, I think it was 2 days of closing, that we'd carry on. Pleased to say we ended up trading all through the year, and we had a in sales terms, we had a good year. The market, if you take some of the data that's been delivered thus far, the luxury watch market as it's portrayed, which is essentially, but not exclusively, the Swiss watch brand. That was down 30% year on year for the full year, which is the worst return you can imagine. We were very lucky to be the opposite side of that, and plus 30. So during the course of the year, we were able to have what amounted to a 60% differential, which means that we gained share. I wish it would have been in different circumstances, frankly, because I wouldn't want this to happen to anybody. But fortunately, our model allowed us to gain share. Now the task is to retain and grow that share again.
I think at the time we spoke last year, you released the Super Compressor watch, and
the one I'm wearing at the moment. So yes, that's the Super Compressor. That's the Ocean Blue.
Yeah. I think just after we spoke, there was also, you added a blue bezel to it as well, which looked pretty cool.
Yeah. Colour is certainly one of the themes that's running its way through the watch industry at the moment. You'll have undoubtedly have noticed, and something as vibrant as the Ocean Blue Super Compressor being such a big line is sort of part of that trend, I think.
Also released the chronograph, hadn't you? The C65
chronograph. Still my favourite watch.
Yeah, how did that go? You just launched it at the time. How did that go?
Not bad. I mean, it's at a different price point, so you don't get anything like the velocity that you get out of a Super Compressor or the C60 Sapphire, which came around about this time last year. We launched the C60 Sapphire. Those two watches, the Sapphire and the Compressor, have become real favourites and bestsellers. The C65 chronograph is the best chronograph we've ever had. But of course, in the lexicon of and in the league table of watches, I learned only the other day actually that if you take Omega, who seem to have a lot of chronographs, it's only 10% of their sales. All of their chronographs combined are apparently only 10% of their sales. So it sort of indicates the pecking order.
Yeah, I didn't realise that about Omega. We also discussed the Sapphire dial watch, and then you recently released one that was, would you call it a black version or like a smoky dial?
Yeah, the Sapphire Black. Yes, it's slightly different in that the blue Sapphire has a polycarbonate sort of wafer that gives the crystal the colour, that vibrant sapphire colour. The Sapphire Black is a single crystal. You can actually get that, as you describe it accurately, a smoky look within the crystal itself. So it doesn't need the polycarbonate wafer beneath it. So it's 0.6 millimeter of thickness of a sapphire dial with that colouring already in, and that's been a phenomenal success since its launch. People really, I mean, the two sapphires have been outstanding for us. kind of attract slightly different customers because of the look. The look is slightly different.
So you joined us back today because there's some new watches that are coming out as well. So I had a sneak peek, and this video will be going live on the launch day, which is the 29th. So this is the new Sealander range.
Yeah, the new Sealander collection, yeah. And a really important step for us, I think, in rounding out the collection a bit. I've described it as the missing link in our collection and our overall range. So we have high expectations. My fingers are crossed. Yeah, I think with a following wind, we'll be okay.
I was reading some of the specs before, and two of the models at least are 39 millimeters, so slightly smaller than the typical rest of the line.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's no question at all. Rolex's recent relaunch of the Rolex, the Explorer 2, tells you the direction of size in watches, and this has been a trend now for some time. I mean, watches move slowly, glacier-like in some instances, but the general direction, as we all know, has been towards smaller diameter cases. For this specific type of watch, which has a nod towards Explorer and also a nod towards things like the Aquaterra, which itself is a nod towards Explorer. I mean, so it's of that sort of ilk, but we hope with a very distinctive Christopher Ward look and feel and architecture to it. Others will decide, but that's what we've aimed to deliver here. But the sweet spot, we believe, for this sort of crossover sports adventure, almost into dress type watch right now and for the foreseeable future is 40 mil and down. And actually, we did consider going even smaller than 39 back some time ago, because these things aren't developed overnight, as you know. We weren't as brave to think that we would go to 36, I have to say. But I'm interested in what Rolex have done, because whatever we'd like to think, there's no question that Rolex set a certain benchmark. And the seal of approval has now been given to small diameter watches, it seems to me. And I think that will, over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years, see yet another reduction in the sweet spot, particularly for this sort of arena of watch. So it's going to be interesting. But for right now, I think 39, which is the automatic and the GMT diameter, and then 40 millimeter for the Elite, we think are absolutely spot on for where this watch is positioned. What do you think? Do you agree with that, by the way?
Yeah, I do agree with it, actually. Yeah. I like that you've gone 39 millimeters. I like that the bracelet is gone to 20 millimeters now. I think definitely for the automatic version that's got that sort of field watch, sports watch aesthetic to it. I think that's a great size. I like that you've done a polar dial in that version as well, or a white dial. It really pops, and I'm a real weirdo about having the date on a watch, so I'm glad to see that the entire range has got the dates on it as well.
You're a datist, are you? Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Some people are and some people aren't. It's an interesting one. But we decided to put it at 6 o'clock on this one, so we wanted a slightly different symmetry, which is why the logo's at 12 with this one.
Yeah, that date at 6 o'clock is definitely a trend at the moment, isn't it? A trend that I love, actually. So Zinn has done something very similar, haven't they?
That's right, yeah.
The GMT version, when I've only just received like the full high-res pictures of it, but as soon as I saw it, I sort of smiled, because everybody was looking towards Rolex to really bring something great out for the Explorer 2's 50th anniversary, and they didn't really do anything. Whereas your GMT watch is kind of, it's almost like what the Explorer 2 could have been. It's not a direct homage, but it's definitely got some of the design cues. I think it looks awesome.
Thank you. And the team will be delighted to hear that, because the reaction to those people like yourself or the journalists we've already shown the GMT2 has been astonishing. And somehow, I think you're right. I think the sense of a little disappointment that Rolex didn't do something has led to a sort of a delight that it clearly is a nod towards the Explorer 2. But as I said, I hope it's not a homage in that sense. We're not trying to ape them. It's very Christopher Ward. It's got our design cues from our Trident collection, but also interesting design cues of its own, including a brand new case design. So although it architecturally follows the pattern that we've established with the Lightcatcher case, this case sits somewhere between the C65 retro case, which has softer faceting, and the C60 Trident case, which is a very contemporary tool watch arena. This sits, intentionally somewhere in the middle, but it's quite a dynamic feel to it, because we think it's a contemporary watch. Although if you go back to Explorer territory, all of those design cues are born of the mid-50s, but this is not a watch of the mid-50s. This is very much a watch of 2021 and beyond, we hope. But so we're very excited, and it's the GMT, I think, is. Although, interestingly, I love the GMT. I'm going to say I love all of them, once that's my job. But of all the three that I'm in some ways I'm proudest of, and we'll talk about all three, I'm sure. But the one that I just absolutely love is the Auto 300 days, because when you pare things back, quality has to be obvious. If you aren't engineering things beautifully and finishing to a high level of detail, simple pared back things can look dreadful. And I think for me it demonstrates in some ways the journey that we've been on over the past 50 years, that we could now produce a watch of this ilk, retail it at $595 for a strap version, and it have all of the sort of engineering excellence that we've been developing over those 15 years. So I'm proud of, proudest in many ways of that watch, because I think it absolutely gets to the core of what Chris Ward is about. And we did debate. You are pleased that we ended up with the date, but we did debate long and hard about whether we would, because I'm kind of a little the other way. I'm a simple man anyway, but I'm not intelligent enough to have sophisticated taste. But genuinely, I tend towards simpler and down, not minimalist necessarily, but in that direction. And this, I was quite at one stage. I was pushing for no date on that watch, but I'm pleased that the guys convinced me to go with the date across all of the three models, because I think the symmetry that we've now created with the watch is better as a result of that. But these are beautifully engineered watches and incredible value.
This is not an intentional advertisement for this watch from me, but if I was designing a watch, that the automatic would be the way that I would do it, because it scratches so many OCD things I have about watches. So it has the date on it. You haven't lost the indice marker at the 6 o'clock position to sacrifice for the date. The minute hand goes all the way to the outer minute track instead of falling short.
Yeah.
It was like that World Timer that I reviewed. I think I said at the time, it looks like a simple design, but the simplicity is where it all comes together. So yeah, I like the automatic. The Sealander Elite is the top of the range. How does that watch differ? Where was the inspiration for that? Because it's not a departure from that if you look at the other watches that you've got in the sort of dress watch category, but it's definitely different than the sort of dive watches.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And firstly, it's titanium, so it's very light. But the inspiration for it is an interesting inspiration. There's a 100-mile bike ride called Ride London, which sadly was abandoned last year for reasons we all know about, and has been pushed back again this year, sadly. And I did that ride in 2019, and You have to do quite a fair bit of training to be able to ride 100 miles across London into Surrey, up Box Hill, which is a famous hill. In fact, we pretty much did the Olympic, the 2012 Olympic route, in the 100 miles. So in the training of that, I mean, I'm hardly going to be somebody who's going to wear a smartwatch or a Garmin, am I? So I'm cycling with one of our watches. And of course, if you're familiar with, and if you're a cyclist yourself, those who are listening to this will know this to be the case. The position of your hand when cycling often forces the crown of a watch to dig into them, which can become very uncomfortable. Yeah. And so during the course of my hundreds of miles of training for and literally was hundreds of miles of training for Ride London in 2019, I determined that was not, we had to find a watch that I could ride comfortably with. And that led us to a retractable crown. And there are very few retractable crowns in watchmaking. We can only find another 2 watches at the moment. One is the Aquaterra Ultralight.
Also titanium,
which I think retails at around £40,000.
A steal at $50,000, I think. Yeah, I might have pointed it out on the podcast before.
50, yeah, an absolute steal. I'm sure you've got half a dozen in your doors somewhere. We wanted this to be the elite in this scenario. This is a sports watch. It's an elite sports watch. Coming further down the line towards the end of the year, you'll see another evocation of this watch in terms of its sporting prowess and its usefulness in that situation. So we wanted to work out how we could incorporate a retractable crown, which makes this a very special watch. You combine that with the titanium, you combine that with the fact that it's a chronometer, you combine that with the fact that we've cut through the dial to take out weight, but also to add a really interesting look. So if you shine a light through the back of this watch, the light comes through the front. It's a really sexy watch in lots of ways, yeah. And it will have its own titanium bracelet as well as the strap option. So it's a very special watch, so pushing out those technical boundaries that we also delight in trying to do, whether it be super compressors, for instance, whether it be some of our own JJ calibers or SH21. The challenges associated with the Auto and the GMT were much more around finding the design that was right to express those watches, because they're relatively straightforward watches, beautifully engineered, wide appeal, crossover sports adventure watches. With the Elite, this was, to live by its name, something that was at the top of that, which had to be pushed technically. If you're going to have a true sports watch that's useful in a number of specific sporting events, then it has to be technically advanced. And so this was as much as a design challenge, it was as much a technical challenge. The guys working with the crown manufacturer created a retractable crown that is beautifully easy to operate, touch, and it's in and out. Is incredibly comfortable to wear. The head is, 45 grams, so it's incredibly light because of titanium. We feel that this is going to be the real winner. The reaction we've had to it so far is just astonishing from people, because as you point out, and as I say, the competition for a watch of this technical specification is in the stratosphere. Nobody's ever produced a watch of this ilk at our sort of value. That makes it a very exciting entry, I think, into the world of watches, certainly for me.
So how does the crown work? It's not, you unscrew it and it pops out, or
no, you just press it.
Wow.
It's watertight to 150 meters. You just press it. It's the simplest way of describing it, Sam, is it's just like a pen. It's like it's no different to a pen. When it's depressed, you're wearing it and you're using it like I would have been had it been around 2 years ago for Ride London. I'd have been able to wear it and not have any discomfort and not have any imprints of the crown on the back of my hand, which is what I had riding it. So it's got real practical and comfort benefits, but it's a really sexy piece of kit. And as I said, there are only 2 watches other than ours that have got anything approaching this sort of crown. There are 2. I mean, for those I don't know if you know this, but in Switzerland, really there are only really 2 crown manufacturers of any repute that and the world goes to them. Yeah, everybody goes to them. And we've actually one is Swiss, the other is French. Yeah, just near the border. We're talking, these are the guys who produce crowns for the very top end brands. We're talking very, very high end brands, and that's where the crown's coming from. And we've gone with the French manufacturer because they were able to work out with us how we incorporated best into this particular design. And so it's a stunning piece of technical expertise, but it has a real value for the wearer. I mean, it's not just showing off for showing off's sake. It's got a real benefit in wear. And as I say, the inspiration came from nothing more exciting than me riding a bike.
I know when we spoke last, you had a few models that you'd been using an in-house or a Christopher Ward designed movement, and I know the industries it sort of went that direction in 2020, and then noticing sort of at Watches and Wonders there wasn't so much talk about in-house movements. But was there a thought of putting an in-house caliber in these new watches? I see you've stuck with Sellita, which I know served you very well over the years.
At launch, no. I can see, and we are already talking about. Will there be a Sealander SH21 at some point? Well, subject to this launch going the way we hope it does go, the customers will tell us, give us the answer to that fairly shortly. If it's as successful as we hope it's going to be, then there will almost certainly at some point be a Sealander SH21 without question, but not within too short a period of launch. Probably we're talking 22, 23.
Before we go here, last time we'd spoke, it was in the early stages of I know it was only a year ago, but it was the British Clock and Watchmakers Association. I'm really interested to know how that went, because I think at the time Nicholas at Fears had just joined.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Nick was one of the founders. So when Roger Smith and I decided to start this idea off, we constructed a small board of 5, of which Nicholas was one of the founding board members. To be honest, the reaction has been way beyond our expectation. As of yesterday, we signed up our 60th trade member, I think, or about. So who knew when we started thinking and talking about this, Roger and I, 2 or 3 years ago, who knew that there were going to be 60 plus watch brands incorporated in the British Isles, and so it's the response has been fantastic. It's still early days. We're still working out how best we encourage this sector in the future. But what's been demonstrated by the people who've joined already is the hunger that exists for a light to be shined on this sector. So, and our role, as I probably said last time we spoke, the purpose of the Alliance, our role in the Alliance is primarily to allow some sunshine onto what is an incredible sector that's a renaissance in British watchmaking of all different types, and if you allow sunshine in, things tend to grow, don't they? And so that's what's happening here. There's a light being shone on a sector that previously didn't even know it existed. This growth and interest in this wonderful watchmaking sector in the British Isles, and it is time, as they say.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us. The watches are live now on the website, so go and check them out, guys. I really appreciate it, Mike. Thanks.
As always, a pleasure, Sam. Thank you.